Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us tonight for our Advice Line live event. Tonight's topic is on supporting autistic people with co-occurring conditions. So, my name is Caitlin, and I am the Senior Community Advisor here at our National Advice Line, and I'm joined by two lovely community advisors here in our team, Kirsten and Maureen. So, I'll pass over to them to do a little introduction before we get started tonight. Kirsten, do you want to introduce yourself firstly?
Yeah, I'm Kirsten, and I've worked on the advice line for 3.5 years now. My background is education, neurodivergent myself, and I've got neurodivergent lots of family members as well. So everything kind of comes from experience too.
Maureen, do you want to do a little introduction as well?
Hi, yeah, I'm Maureen, and I've been working with the Advice Line now for must be about 10 years. And I have an autistic son who is now 34. And he was diagnosed at 4. So I've been around the autism community for about 30 years. So that's my interest and focus.
Thanks so much, ladies, for that little introduction. So, like I said, our topic tonight is supporting autistic people with co-occurring conditions. So, we do have a few questions that we've got pre-submitted that we'll start with, but please feel free to leave any questions on this topic that you may have in the comments below, and we'll try to get to those questions as well tonight. But I'll start off tonight, I guess, with a question we've had in that says, do autistic people experience more eating challenges, and how can we get proper support for this? So I'm wondering if, Kirsten, you'd like to start us off with answering this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is, a common co-occurring condition. Things like ARFID, and which is avoidant and restrictive food intake disorder, but different eating disorders can be very much linked to autism too. Often, and I speak from sort of personal experience as well, it can often be textures and colors of food and all sorts of things that can put young people off. It can start really, really early, and I talk from experience there. From sort of baby, not, weaning sort of on different foods and not having things touching on plates and things like that. It can be very much based around kind of things with breadcrumbs and dry things, and not liking sort of sauces and things that are too sort of mushy. So it can be really textured, led. So a lot of sort of sensory stuff going on there as well. It can be quite a routine thing as well. I know again from personal experience, it was the same thing over and over, night after night. And you do worry about, your children's nutrition, and you do think, are they getting everything that they should be? So it's really speaking to a health visitor, speaking to a GP, and then, if needs be, having a referral from for a dietitian, and just making sure that they are getting everything. I think we as parents get really, really hung up about it sometimes, and I can say from experience again that it does change over the years as well. You think that your child is never going to eat anything apart from chicken nuggets and cornflakes, and you think that that's going to go on forever. And it can be really difficult out socially and things like that, because you think, what on earth are they going to eat? I'm going to take them to this restaurant, and it can be really challenging, but it's a real thing. And I think that's what's so important. It's not just them being fussy eaters, it's a real thing, and it feels really important to them. And I know things like, when you've got in-laws who maybe say, oh, he's just so fussy and he's not going to eat that and he's not going to do this, and it's Christmas Day and why is he not having turkey? But at the end of the day, it is very real and it is very personal, and going with it as much as you can is important, and just giving them that little bit of desensitization to it, letting them smell things, letting them lick things, and just even being present at the table, just having that food at the table, or so it's around them, because it can be a real aversion to food as well, and it can be a huge challenge. Don't know if you've got anything to add, Maureen, to that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, again, personal experience, my son, when he was younger, it was very much white carbohydrates, potatoes, rice, chips, bland. It always looked kind of bland food. But now, he eats a wide variety of. He still gets favourites, but he will eat a lot of more different foods. And I think you're right. I think as parents, you worry that your child's not getting the right nutrition. Um, but it's, when you think back, well, I think back to my childhood. Maybe there wasn't so many fancy foods about. It was your mince and tatties and your fish and chips. So, and there's such a wide range of things now. So it's quite. I mean, I think it usually does get better. I think, Kirsten. I think they will try things, and again, I think some of it's the fear of the unknown,
Yeah.
and also
Yeah,
things look different. So if you think about something like chips, they pretty much look the same, or chicken nuggets look the same. But if blueberries can be different, you can get different sizes, different textures. So that can be difficult for them too.
yeah, absolutely. It's that unpredictability of a different fruit. You might have a fruit
Yeah.
that's really sweet, but the next time it's really sour, and it looks maybe similar, but it can change. Whereas McDonald's fries don't; they just come out the same all the time. So you've got that predictability, and you don't have, that concern over what it might taste like.
Yeah. And I think as well, there's something about, as you were saying, maybe having family members that maybe don't quite understand the situation, and you become stressed about it as well. And as we often talk about in the advice line, if you get stressed, your child's probably going to pick up on that stress, and then
Mm.
they get stressed, and then that's just not going to lead to any health eating at all. It just becomes a big situation. So
Yeah,
I'm a great believer in trying to go with the flow, and unless it's causing a medical situation with their health, then but I mean, again, go to your GP and discuss it. Maybe get some input from health visitors just to put your mind at rest.
yeah.
And we have some signposting that our marketing team will add in the comments of this below. So there is the Beat helpline. Beat eating disorders have a helpline, so they can give you a bit more pointed advice in terms of eating. And there's also Peace Pathway, and there's the Arthrid Awareness UK as well. So we'll put those links down below in terms of eating challenges specifically, and as well our advice lines there if you want to have a one-on-one chat with us out with this context. But we are here for the next half an hour or so. We're here till 7:30. So if you have any questions that you want us to answer now, please leave them in the comments below and we will get to them in due course if we have time to. But likewise, if you have something that's a bit more personal that you maybe don't want to share in this context, we do have our advice line, which is opened Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays and Fridays, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So please do reach out to us there if you want to speak on us one-on-one as well. We do have some more submitted questions because we've not had any on the live yet. So I'll move on to our next pre-submitted question to chat with you ladies about. So the next question we've had is around um, autism and ADHD as a co-occurring condition. So this individual has asked, are there any strategies for handling emotional dysregulation in autistic individuals with ADHD? So I think they're just wanting a bit of a more ADHD and autism framed answer to emotional dysregulation. So I wonder if either of you ladies want to start us off with an answer around this one?
Yeah, I can start. I've got ADHD myself, so yeah, it's something that I experience myself and have done all through my life as well. Um, it can be really difficult to not only regulate your own emotions, but also to understand other people's emotions. And if you've got that dual ADHD and autism, you've kind of got a real mix there, and they can sort of mix each other up as well. So, your ADHD self might have a certain way with emotions, but your autistic side might have another way with your emotions as well. And that can be even more challenging because you've got the two things to kind of cope with as well. I would say, looking at something visual can be really, really supportive. I know myself sometimes, on the advice line we give out templates for like the 5 point scale, the incredible 5 point scale, which is a scale of any emotion. It's sort of a 1 to 5 scale, and it basically is as you go up through that scale, and everybody has a scale really, you start off feeling a wee bit, restless, and you go straight to a strategy and what can you do to start bringing yourself down again. But also on one of the scales, it does say what's happening in your body at the time. And that can be something really difficult and something disconnected for ADHD and autistic people, where they don't recognize what's happening in their own bodies, and part of that's to do with your sense of interoception. You don't know what emotions you're feeling, so that can be really puzzling, and you might not notice that your heart's racing and that you're getting really hot because you're angry. So sort of saying to somebody and helping them to recognize some of those indicators of how you are feeling can be really helpful. And then, as I say, the 5 point scale can then lead you to a strategy. So, for example, if your young person's got a trampoline, I can see you're at a 2 on the scale now. I'm wondering if you need a wee jump on the trampoline, help bring yourself back down again because you're getting a wee bit angry or however you're feeling. So using that emotional literacy and staying very calm yourself, and sort of having that kind of positive environment as well to help you sort of recognize and come back down again from that sort of dysregulation. There's also added into the equation, there's something called rejection sensitive dysphoria, which can be really, it can be actually physically painful almost. I can't really describe it to you, but if you have rejection sensitivity, if somebody says something to you, it escalates and your emotions become absolutely huge. And it's almost like being punched. It's being having this huge emotion that you've then got to deal with. And it can lead to a lot of sort of rumination and, going over and over things. If you've perceived something as being a rejection, it can be really overwhelming. So that can be an aspect mostly associated with ADHD, but the combined obviously as well. So emotional regulation we get asked a lot about, and it's a lot about introducing the language of emotions, giving your young person or an adult the emotional literacy to be able to use that language as well, is really important. And as I said, visuals as well can be so helpful, because the first thing to go when you are feeling emotional is your verbal language. Your communication just goes. So having something very visual can be really helpful in that instance. Maureen,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, just what you say, I think trying to help your child learn how their emotions affect them is really important, and to give them, as you say, the words, the literacy for that. There's also, I don't know, I can't remember if you mentioned it, that Alexi, I can never remember how you pronounce it, it's alexithymia. It's the same thing about not being able to identify or understand or describe emotions, and that's quite common as well with a lot of autistic and ADHD people. So it's trying to help your child understand that. And that can be difficult, especially if they're young, because autism being a developmental condition, when child, if you think of a 2-year-old, it's quite difficult for them to get the words to explain how they're feeling. But as time goes on, they do learn that, and autistic children, will learn that as well. And using, I remember once somebody said a good way to help them is if you watch like soap operas or something like that with them, and then talking about the characters and how they're acting and how do they think they're feeling just now, and sort of trying to use that as a way to help the child understand what the emotions are that they're seeing, and then maybe try to relate that to themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have the added thing of if it's a pre-verbal or non-verbal, trying to know whether they have that
Mhm.
um, receptive language, whether they are understanding that and how they can express themselves. So it's about communication methods as well and how
Mhm.
they can let you know what their emotions are. It can
Yeah.
be quite challenging. So using a lot of photographs and of expressions and things like that, and having that channel for them exploring that and expressing that.
Yeah.
Thanks so much both for those great answers. We have had some comments around similar themes for some people, so I wonder if we can touch upon this a little bit more before we move on to our next question. So Pamela has let us know that she has a teen who's struggling to regulate her nervous system, and she's wondering how to promote more healthy coping strategies rather than unhealthy coping strategies that her teen is currently relying on and using. So this is around a 16-year-old. So what would you guys suggest for kind of getting those coping mechanisms to a healthier place for a young person in that situation?
I think that's quite difficult, at that sort of age group as well, because it is those sort of teen years which can be full of angst anyway. So, and it's about, you're absolutely right. It's about, what you can do. And, a lot of young people, maybe self-harm and things like that. So it's about having a whole toolkit, I would say, of positive things, going through with them what they like to do. I know some people like to do things like mindfulness, colouring in and drawing. Some people draw on their own skin as well, as a sort of expression of trying to get that sort of feedback as well, because a lot of people, do turn to things like that. So I suppose it's about exploring, you know, what is it that brings you back down a bit? What is it that calms you? And looking at your sort of energy levels and things like that. So looking at what kind of music might be helpful for you. For example, you can have a Spotify, for example, playlist for if you're feeling angry. You can have one if you're feeling sad. You can have one for different emotions, and that can be really helpful. Sort of just breaking that down and then going to that strategy when you are feeling like that. But it is really difficult to sort of to switch away from the negative way of thinking to thinking to yourself, actually, I'm going to choose a strategy. What could I do? I know my own children had jars with like affirmations and things inside them, or jars with ideas of things to do, like have a bath with a bath bomb, or do some mindfulness colouring in, or do some drawing or painting, or whatever it was that they like to do. And they would take some, the paper out of the jar and have a look at something. So having sort of those strategies and having a real toolkit for the young person, I think, is the way I would go for that.
Yeah. And I think what you said about knowing your energy levels as well, because obviously we want to try and prevent the meltdown or the behaviour happening in the first place if they're really anxious and stressed. So it's trying to look at ways to reduce anxiety before it gets to that point where they maybe are going down the road of behaviours that aren't so good for them, Yeah, definitely looking at that and just getting to know themselves. And that's not easy either, but it just takes a bit of time and thinking about it and
Yeah.
working to what's going to help them.
Again, doing that visually as well. I can't stress enough how visually important it is. My daughter had a big whiteboard in her room, and she used it for absolutely everything. And you can change it all the time because it's a whiteboard as well. You can scrub it off, but she would put all sorts of things on the whiteboard, and it was just really, really helpful having that visual reminder, because again, it's that kind of communication aspect that if you just say to your young person, oh, why don't you go and listen to such and such, it might not get processed in the same way. So let's have a look at your board. What were some of the strategies you had on there? Let's go through them. And sort of modeling that yourself as well. What are the things that work for you? Is
Mm.
it, having a cup of tea? Is it, a nice hot chocolate? What is it that helps you? And even saying to them, I'm actually not feeling that great at the moment. I think I'm going to go and sit down and read my magazine for 10 minutes. And, sort of modeling that for them, I think can be really helpful too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you both for sharing that. And Pamela, like I said before, please, if you would like to unpack this a bit more one-to-one with one of our advisors, please get in touch via our advice line, or if you would prefer us reaching out to you, if you send us a Facebook message, our marketing team can pass on your details and one of us will contact you directly and we can kind of unpack a little bit for you and your daughter in terms of what's been going on. Just before we move on, we've also had a comment from Scott about his 11-year-old autistic daughter in terms of coping in mainstream school. So, do we have any advice that we can pass around that in terms of accessing mainstream school and maybe things that they could be asking for or doing to support his young person going to school more regularly?
So, we've got obviously working with the school is really important. You've got to help the school understand, work down, try and figure out what the reasons are why his daughter's not feeling comfortable at going to school. It could be for a variety of different reasons.
Mhm.
Um, but obviously working with the school closely as well is important to try and see if they can figure out ways to support as well.
Yeah, I think we quite often use things like talking mats with young people, and it doesn't matter how old they are. It can be a talking mat that you write things down. So basically, kind of thinking about the whole school day from the beginning, and we can supply you a list of the sort of things as well. It could be from it could be before even going into school in the morning. So it could be, you know, labels on her clothes. It could then be her favorite breakfast cereal not being there. It could be the journey to school. It could be then the school bell, the cloakroom, and so it goes on. If you think, about that sort of losing it line, then for somebody who's neurodivergent, they're reaching that line before they maybe even get to break time. Then you've got the social aspects of break time. You've got so kind of unpicking, as Maureen says, sort of what's happening at school and where things are not working. And talking mats is just a tool for doing that. So sorting under headings like not a problem, a bit of a problem, or a huge problem, and sort of taking, right, the school bell, is that a no problem at all? Is it a big problem? Yeah, lunch hall, assembly, all sorts of things, and just breaking down, what is going wrong for your young person? Where is it not working for them? And then, like Maureen says, speaking to your school, um, you know, if possible, getting an educational psychologist involved as well, and having regular meetings with school about what could be done to support the young person. For example, if it was the cloakroom in the morning was, causing some dysregulation, could they come in through a different door? Could it be a soft start? Could they start in the classroom and then have everybody else come in and join them? Certainly done that myself as a teacher, had young people come in just a few minutes early, help me with some tasks, and then everybody comes in the dribs and drabs afterwards. And it can be less overwhelming. So it really depends, what your young person is experiencing.
Yeah. I mean, it can be anything as well. You're talking about sensory stuff there, Kirsten, is and one of the checklists I've got that sometimes I send out to families to think about, what issues might be. There's things like smells. There's a particular smells maybe that are the child doesn't like or finds really overpowering. Um, so yeah, it's trying to get a whole picture of what the issues are.
Mhm. And like I said, we can help unpack that and give you specific strategies and signposting and advice if you get in touch with our advice line, which our marketing team will share the details with below. I know we've had another question through from Mac that's quite similar around ADHD and moods and emotions. So please do get in touch with us, Mac, and we can unpack that complexities a bit more for you with one of our advisors over at Viceline. We do have multiple ways you can get in touch. We have emails, we have our phone line, and we have a live chat on our website. So hopefully there's something that is accessible to everyone in terms of what way you prefer to communicate with us. We can accommodate that. So please do get in touch if you want to unpack a little bit more and get that more specific advice for your young people. I think we can move on to our next question, and it is around non-speaking autistic people. So this individual that's got in touch has asked, how do you support someone who becomes non-speaking when they're overwhelmed? Would this be selective or situational mutism? So I wonder if anyone would like to start us off around this and how we do support non-speaking, or people who maybe go non-speaking in situations as well, rather than non-speaking all the time.
I think you touched on it before, Kirsten, when you were saying about how when you're really stressed, the sort of language communication just kind of goes out the window a bit for some people. I remember years ago being at a conference, and this guy, he said that if he got overwhelmed, his language just went. But what he used was a keyboard. He had an iPad or something, and he would communicate using that. And he said it's actually amazing. He said because it slowed everything right down. It slowed the conversation down with the people he was with, and just made life a lot easier for him to process things. It gave him time to think about it. But yeah, I mean, anxiety can do that obviously with autistic people and ADHD people.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think it is all about kind of what's going on round about, and we use an approach called the low arousal approach. We can send you information about that as well. But it's sort of looking at what our interactions are with the individual, or what the environment is like for the individual. I've certainly experienced it in school where um, at the time that I was teaching, it was kind of referred to as elective mutism, but it's not really elective. It's not a choice. It's not them thinking, I'm just not going to bother speaking today. Uh, Largely, it's because something is happening in the environment, or something is overwhelming them, and that's impacted on their communication. So there were things like sort of, if a teacher wanted to hear that young person reading and that young person just couldn't read in front of the teacher, things like recording it in their safe space at home, um, you know, recording anything at all when they were feeling in a more comfortable environment, or asking the teacher, sort of writing things down using a whiteboard as well in class if the person doesn't want to talk, and or doesn't feel they can talk in that sort of situation. So yeah, there are kind of lots of different strategies that you can use as well. And it might be that they have a peer that they can speak to, that who could be their buddy, who can then speak for them and on their behalf.
Yeah.
But there are people who are like selectively or situationally mute, and then sort of through confidence do sort of begin to grow. And we've heard that on the advice line as well, of people sort of overcoming that as well.
Thank you both for sharing that advice. Both Zoe and Alexis have kind of said some comments around this with their own children, and that they struggle with these sorts of situational mutism or non-verbal altogether. So if you want to get some more pointed advice, like I said, our marketing team have put the information over at Baseline, and we can unpack things a bit more, like I've said previously. But thank you all for sharing that. It is coming to that time where we're going to have to wrap up tonight's Advice Line Live, but it's been great to have such good engagement and have these conversations in the comments as well, and for you all to give us that feedback immediately with these questions. So thanks so much everyone for sharing on this really important topic. Of course, we've not been able to cover every co-occurring condition tonight. There's so much more that we could also get into. So we will be doing future Advice Line Lives as well. Our next one will be in June, and we'll be looking for a topic soon for that. So please do, if you've got any recommendations, you could leave them below, and we'll consider them for our next Advice Line Live as well. But I will just say thank you both, Kirsten and Maureen, for all your great advice tonight, and everyone for watching as well. And like I said, please get in touch with our advice line if you would like some more specific support for you all. Thanks so much for joining us.